have a quick look at it first. So we've got 4 classes here we need to implement, 1 enum and 3 normal object classes. Last week on Friday we went on ahead and finished off building the customer class, the car class and the dealership. The key thing to be very aware of here is the relationships between each of these classes. So the top level class, if you will, is the dealership. And that's what the application is all about, managing dealerships, the stock they have, and which customers actually lease out which cars. So the dealership has an array list of cars. That array list simply stores the list of cars that each individual dealership has to lease out to customers. So that is the reason we have this link here. We have an array list of type car, which means each element in this array list has one of these instances in it. So each element in the array list of car has an instance of the car object. Looking at the car object here, then we can see a couple of things. First of all, we we have the car fuel, which is of type fuel type. That's that enum here. It poses a little bit of a quirk when it comes to actually creating a new instance of car. We just finished off on that yesterday, and we'll recap on it shortly. And the other thing we have is an instance of the object customer. Obviously a car is leased by a customer, so each car object has to store the customer object with which it's associated. So that is why we have this link here, because each car object will have one instance of the one instance of the customer object associated with it. So in a nutshell, dealerships have cars, cars have customers, and being aware of that relationship between the 3 objects is very important when it comes to adding, editing or deleting any of these instances of the object. So with that in mind, we started off yesterday with the 3 methods to add in our new instance of dealer. So we were updating our menu as we worked our way through. So the first one we have is the add new dealership. It's pretty straightforward. It records in the dealership's name, it records in the dealership city in which it's based. But the one quirk we have is we have an array list of type car, but it's an empty one. The reason we have that is in order for us to create an instance of dealership, we must have a name, we must have a city, and we must have a list of car to give into it. Even though we don't have any cars for the dealership yet, we still have to have an empty list to pass in, and that's exactly what we've done here. So we have an empty list that stores car, and then we use that empty list to create an instance of car, and that's it in our system, ready for us to access, and specifically it's inside this list of dealers we created right at the very start. So we'll have a look at that one. The next thing we moved on to was the adding the car method. Starts off straightforward enough. We need to get in the car registration, the car make and the car model. They're all strings, so we've done this quite a few times now. We just used the scanner and some sysouts to prompt the user to enter data, and then we stored that data into an appropriate string. Where it gets a little more interesting is when it comes to dealing with the fuel type. So fuel type is an enum that can have one of 4 values: diesel, petrol, electric or other. And what we need to do is get the user to specify which type they want to use. Our catch is that even though we're using words diesel, petrol and so on, is that fuel type is of type fuel type, not of type string. So we can't say please enter the fuel type, and if the customer enters in petrol, then we just store that. We need to actually list out the enum options and get the user to select which enum they want. So it's a little bit more to it in this case. So the first thing we do on line 95 here is we get all the possible fuel types there are. So at the minute there's 4, we may expand the system out down the line, biofuel or whatever else. But for now I want to get a list of all the different options I have in that enum. So we create an array of fuel types, so it's going to store each of the possible values that get returned from the enum. The array is going to be called fuel type values, and it is set equal to the array that's returned by this. So fuel type dot values, it returns an array, and each element of the array contains each unique option for the fuel type. So the first element will be diesel, the second element will be petrol, the third element will be electric, and the final element will be other. So there we have an array called fuel type values that has 4 elements inside it, each one storing a corresponding fuel type. So now that I have all the individual values stored in that, I use a for loop to print those out to the screen. So let's actually run this and we'll see how that looks. So I'm going to add a new car. I'm just putting in some fake data for now. So what we see here is the product of that for loop. So what we're doing is, for however many values there are inside the array list storing my field types, I'm going to print them out. Specifically two things. I'm printing out an option number. So we got our 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason we have I plus 1 here is I starts equal to 0. The first array element of the field type values is also 0, but that doesn't make much sense to our user. Users expect to see values starting at 1. So that's why I've done that here. And then we're just outputting the value. So option 1 is a diesel, option 2 petrol, electric, and then other. So that's the bit I've highlighted in the console is what this for loop is responsible for. After that, we now have a nice way to link whatever the user types in with whichever fuel type they want. If they type in 1, we know they want diesel. If they type in 2, we know they want petrol. So off the back of that, we get their fuel choice. We save it inside this integer called fuel choice, and then we're having a look to see which one they went for. So in this case, we're bringing it back. So we've done my sc.nextInt -1, so that turns our 1, 2, 3, 4 back into 0, 1, 2, 3 again, which matches the elements in my array. So if we have a 0, then we know the user wants diesel. If we have a 1, we know the user wants petrol. If we have a 2, electric. 3, other. And if they type anything else other than anything else other than 1 to 4 or 0 to 3 as we've translated it, then it's an invalid field type, and all we're doing is basically cancelling the add new car procedure and throwing them back to the main menu again, and that's what that little bit's doing. Very rudimentary validation. It'll work for now. You could probably come up with something a little bit more elegant in terms of the advanced features if you want to, but just rough and ready to get us through the actual process of adding a car. So then the next step we've done is we now have all the information we need to create an instance of car. So we've recorded the car registration, recorded the car make, we've got the car model, we've now got the car fuel sorted thanks to the process we just sorted out above, and the last thing the car needs is a customer. Now we don't have a customer object yet. Okay, that's going to be created in the next part where we can create a customer and then we can assign that customer to a particular car. But since we don't have that information yet, we're going to use a null. A null just means it's empty. We don't have a value for it yet. So by using the value null, it still allows us to create an instance of car, but just without any customer in this case. And then what we'll do in the next step is we'll add a new customer, and then we can assign a customer to whichever car we want it to. Now, to relate this back to your assignment, as someone mentioned there in today's meet, we have a case where we've got a supplier and an address. So what we could do in this stage, instead of having null, we could actually read in all the information for customer now, create an instance of customer and add that in. It's up to yourselves. That's probably a good way to do it in terms of the assignment. The context of this example is a little bit different, which is why I'm doing it this way. So just to stress one more time, at this point in the supplier, we've recorded in all the other information, and the only thing that you don't have is an instance of the address object. What you can do is just record in all of that information now and then create a supplier. I'm doing it a slightly different way just because the context of this example is a little bit different and it suits it better to do it the way I'm going on to do it now. So hopefully everybody's happy enough with that. So we've now created the new car object, and then what we've done is just call the print car details method, and that's just a test to make sure that everything's working grand. Now when we did this yesterday, so let's just say it's other, we've called that print method and we have an issue at this point because we've created this customer called null, because there's nothing there. Whenever we try to actually print out the car details and we try to print out the customer details, there's no customer there for us to actually print, and that's what's causing the issue. So if we have a look at the error, we can see that we've got an exception in thread. Where's the right bit? So there you can see the problem there is in print car details. We've got a null, what's called a null pointer exception. So if we break that down, because I've created something that's null, it doesn't exist. So whenever I try to call the get customer details on a customer object, because there's no customer there to call that method on, it throws this exception. So what I need to do is come into this method and actually do a little bit of tweaking just to make sure this crash doesn't actually happen. Before we get stuck into that, that's pretty much our recap done, so we'll see if there's anything else through today's meet. So what is the difference between next line and next line? So this bit that I've highlighted is the name of the scanner. This is just a different name for the scanner. So if we have a look in my main menu and go all the way to the top, we can say I've created a scanner called MySC. So I now have an object called MySC. In some of the practicals it's called in, and some of the practicals it's called SC. In examples you see a line that comes by all sorts of names, but all it is the name of the scanner object, the same as the name of the customers, the dealerships I create. It's just the name we give to this particular scanner I'm working with. What it means that every time I want to read something in, I need to call the scanner that I've created, so I have to also have MySC. If you've called your scanner in, it will be in dot something. If you called it input, it will be input dot whatever method you want to call. So as I said, this is just the name of the scanner that we've created. Then we have the dot, and then that is just the method that we want to execute against it. Static, don't be worrying about it too much at the minute. It's something that we come up and explore in detail next semester. For now, if we have an object class, we generally speaking don't use the word static. In fact, for now, you don't use the word static. If you're in any other type of class, then you do use the word static. We do talk about the meaning of this in a lot more detail next semester, but for now, you don't really need to worry about it. So, no static in object classes, static in everything else. Hopefully you're happy enough. 17, if you do want to know a little bit more about it, feel free to pop down and see me afterward. In the assignment, the methods are with an object class, as having the example that we created in the menu. What do we do? So the methods I'm creating here aren't in any of the object classes. If we look at this example here, we can see that the methods I have, print car details, that's in the object class. So if I come in here, this is the one that I'm actually going to be adjusting. So print car details, it's there and it's in the UML. If you have a look back at that slide for the add new car, for the add new dealership, you'll not find those methods anywhere in the UML. Exactly the same in your assignment. You'll not find methods for add new supplier, delete new supplier, or products, or addresses. You'll not find those anywhere in the UML. That's because we generally expect to interact with those through our menu type class that we're working on at the minute. So if you're still not sure about that, again, pop up at the end and have a chat. Okay, I think that's us caught up. So what we're going to do now is update this, and again, just a reminder that the problem here is because we've created a null customer when we've added a new car, whenever we try to call the get customer details method, which is obviously in the customer object class, it can't do that because no customer exists, it's null, it's nothing. So what I need to do here is check to see if the customer object is null, and then if it is, I just need to print out a wee message saying caution, no customer added to this car. Otherwise, we can then print out the customer details. So the same thing we did for the dealership yesterday. I expected a similar problem with the dealership, which obviously didn't happen yesterday, but you can see the problems happened with the customer in this case, so we're going to go on ahead and fix it. Right, so to check this, we're going to do an if statement, and what we need to do is check to see if car lease, which is the instance variable that stores the customer, is equal to null. Now, you'll notice in this stage that I've used the equals equals method and I've not used dot equals, which I usually would use in an object class. The reason I've done equals equals in this case is because I'm checking to see whether it's empty. So a dot equals will effectively check the contents of the object and allow you to compare that object to something else. In this case, I don't want to check the contents of the object, I simply want to see if the object itself is empty. So this is one of the few exceptions with objects where we'll use a double equals instead of the dot equals. So your go-to thought anytime you're doing an if statement with an object should always be the dot equals method. This is one of the exceptions, and that's why I'm doing equals equals. So this is going to check if it's empty. If it is, then I want to do something. So we're going to do a sysout caution, no customer assigned. Otherwise, we're going to print out the customer details. So we're checking to see if the car lease is null, so if there's no customer attached to this car. If there's no customer attached to the car, then I'm printing out a little caution message. And if it's anything else, then it must have a customer object attached to it, so we're going to print off their details. So that's what our method here is doing. So let's just test that works then. So we're going to run this one more time. We're going to add new car. We'll just have some sample data in here for now. And there we go, customer details. We've got our ASD, and other, which is exactly what we expect, but this time no customer assigned. So we have our caution message. So that is the car created. We can now verify that it's been created because we're called the print detail methods. We've corrected that issue with null pointer exception, but we're not quite done yet. The next thing we need to do with the car is figure out which dealership is it going to be associated with. Because remember, our application has many dealerships, so when we create a car, we need to say which dealership the car is actually going to be put into. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is print out a list of dealerships and allow the user to pick which one they want. So this is going to be quite a similar procedure to what we did with the enum. So let's get stuck into it. So we're going to come back into our main menu. And we're going to go down to the bottom again. We no longer need to print off the car details. That line was only in there purely as a test to make sure that the car was created and that I was able to call one of its methods okay. So now we're happy that the car has been created correctly. We can move on to the next part. So we'll do a sysout and we're going to ask which dealership should the car be assigned to. And then what we need to do is print out our dealers. So at the very, very top, we've got our array list of dealers. It starts off as an empty list. I've added 2 dealerships into it. I also have the option to create more. So what I want to do is get this array list and print off all the dealers that are actually there. So to do that, we're going to need a for loop. Because we want to print out the option 1, option 2, option 3 again, it's better for us to use a normal for loop rather than an enhanced for. So we're going to have int I is equal to 0. And this loop is going to keep going until I is less than dealers.size. And then we want to go through each dealer in the list, so it's going to be I++. So what we want to do now is print out the option number, so it's going to be I+1, so we start from 1 instead of 0 in terms of what the user sees. And then what we want to do is call the print dealer info method. So it's going to show me the dealer name and the city in which they're based, and that's going to give me all the information the user needs to make a decision for which dealership they add it to. So we're going to start off with a sysout, and it's just going to have it as print, and inside that we're going to have I+1 again, so that the user sees the menu option starting from 1 instead of 0. And then we're just going to stick a colon in there as well, so we have a separator between the option number and the actual value. Now, you'll notice in this case I've just used a straightforward print. If we have a look at the dealership object, if we give me a moment to get it open here, goes through class. So in the dealership object, I've got this method called print dealer info, and because it's print dealer info, it's actually printing those values out to the console itself. So I can't put a print out statement inside a print statement. So that's why I've done a print out for the option number, and then I'm just going to call this method, which will print itself out to the screen. So let's come back in and add that. So we're going to have so we're going to have dealers dot. Okay, so a little bit more to this one. So we want to print out the dealer information, but we want to print out the dealer information for the first one on the list, then the second one on the list, then the third one, and so on until we get there. So remember, the list dealers has more than one dealer inside it, so I want to go to each dealer and get its value. So for me to get a specific dealership from the list of dealers, I need to use the get method. So I'm accessing the list of dealers, and then I want to get a specific element. Which element do I want to get? Well, I want to get the one that's at I. So the first time the loop runs, it's going to get the first one on the list. The second time the loop comes around, it's going to get the second one, the third one, and so on and so forth until it actually runs out. So at this stage, we've now got one dealership from the list, depending where we are in the loop. For each of those dealerships we get, what we want to do is call the print dealer info method. So I'm going to do another dot, and then we're going to get another list of options. And in this case, I want to get the print dealer info method. So I'm going to break this down into 2 parts, because this is, as mentioned before, we start chaining or linking through different objects and methods. The first part here, up to the second dot, it's accessing the dealer's array list, and it's getting whichever dealership object is currently at position I. So as I said, the first time the loop runs will be position 0, the second time it will be position 1, and so on. So for whichever dealership it's currently accessing, it's going to print that dealer's information. So it's going to print that dealer's name and city out the screen. So let's just run this again and see that working to that point. So we're going to add new car, just some random sample data. And there we go, we have our option. Which dealership is the car going to be assigned to? We've got option 1 and option 2, and we can see that it's printed out the header information, so we know the city and we know the dealership name. So if we look, Curious Car Sales operates in Belfast. If we go into the dealership, dealer name operates in Deal City. So you can see that for each instance of dealership that we've gone through, it's just got that method and printed out that information. So now that we've got that, what we need to do is record the user's option, and this is exactly the same stuff as we've done before. So we're going to have another sysout, which is going to be a prompt. It's just going to be a print statement, and we're going to say please enter option or dealer number I've got. So the user will in theory type in 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever else. So what I'm going to get in this case is I'm going to have a new int, which is going to be dealno, so just the dealership number, whichever option they've chosen, and it's going to be mysc.nextInt. And then again, because we're dealing with numbers, we need to shift the scanner to the next line, so it's going to be mysc.nextLine. So we now have the dealership number in place. So what we probably should do at this stage, if we're doing a bit of advanced validation, is we want to make sure that the number they've typed in is no bigger than the size of the array list. So my array list at the minute has a size of 2 because I've got 2 dealerships. So I'd want to make sure that whatever number they typed in fell within the values of 1 and whatever number I have on the list. I'm not going to do that, but if you were going on ahead and doing validation as an advanced feature, that's the sort of thing you would add on at this stage. For now, I'm just going to assume the value that's typed in is correct. So when I run this, when I type in something that's not correct, it will break the system, but that's expected behavior in this case. So now that I know which dealership I want to add it to, I'm going to create a dealership object just as a temporary store, so I know which dealership I actually want to add the car to. So I'm going to call it dealership MyD is equal to dealers.get, and it's going to be dealno. And we'll need to do -1 here as well. We could have done the -1 up here at the next int, but remember, the user's typed in 1 or 2, but the value needs to be 0 or 1 in this case because we've got that offset. So we could do -1 here in the next int, or I've just done it here in the dealership number. It just means we're definitely going to get the right dealership that we want to add it to. Once we've done that, we need to add this car to that particular dealership. So this is going to be another case where we're accessing a specific dealership, we're getting an array list, and we're adding something else to it. So it's going to be this sort of chain-like process. So the first thing I want to do in the MyDealership is get the car list. So here we've got MyD.getDealership cars. That means for that dealership I've selected, I've gone into that object and got the list of cars that we're dealing with. Now that I've got that list of cars, what I want to do is add something to that list. What is it I want to add? I want to add the car that I've just created a few lines before, and that's that. So one of the questions in today's meeting at the start of the session was how do you access an array list in an object? That's it. So in this case, we've identified which dealership we want to add the car to. We've got the array list of cars from that particular dealership, and then we've added the car I've just created to that dealership list, and that is the whole process done. The very last thing I need to do is just return to the menu and of course test. So we'll test it, then we'll bounce over into today's meet, have a quick chat, and then we'll look at the final one, which is adding a new customer. So in this case, let's just run through the whole process. Let's start off by adding a new dealership. So I'm going to call this a test dealer, and I'm going to say it's in Belfast. And if I print off all my dealership information, there we go, we can see test dealer operates in Belfast, and at the minute we've got no cars in stock. So what we're going to do here is go back to the main menu, and then I'm going to add a new car. So ABC123 for the reg, we'll have a BMW, or BMC in this case, we'll have it as a 520, we'll say it's diesel. Which one they want added to? Well, we can see that that new dealership I've just added has appeared. So that's a nice little bit of testing that we've done. A new dealership has appeared to this list. So let's add this BMC to dealership number 3. Brings us back to the main menu. Now let's check to make sure that car has actually been added to my test dealership. And there we go. We can see here we've got the test dealer. Operates in Belfast. We've got the car details, which is an ABC123 reg car. And we don't have any customer details for it yet. So at the minute I'm feeling pretty good. Everything's working so far, and I haven't made any cock-ups in the live demo so far. So it's always a good sign for me. Right, let's have a look at today's meet, see if there's any questions at this point. Right now it seems like you're just implementing the UML and testing it. You're not doing any additional features. Nope, not at all. So if you look at your assignment spec, there's 2 things we ask you to do. Number 1 is pretty much build the UML diagram with all of those methods, etc. intact. The next thing we do is ask you to create a menu system, a validated menu system that allows you to add suppliers and products. Pretty much what I've just done here in terms of this example, except we have a dealership, but we've built that UML, we've built all the methods in it. I've built a validated menu system, and I'm 2/3 of the way through my adding methods. I can now add a new dealership, I can now add a new car. We're going to have a look at adding a new customer next. So hopefully you can see how closely this maps on to your assignment. The one thing I will say though, because I've had a few people come and ask me about this yesterday, you can't copy and paste any of this code across, it just won't work. This is a working example on a similar scenario that you can use as reference, but you'll not be able to copy and paste any of this code across because the products and suppliers is a completely different context. Okay, it's a completely different scenario, so you will need to build it from scratch, but this should provide a nice scaffold, a nice route for you to follow to help you get there a little bit easier. In terms of additional features, I've not done anything else past that part. I want to have a look at additional features next week with you to show you a few bits that you could do with this example to sort of up it a bit. Well, the main menu in our assignment be for suppliers. So we've talked very much about this concept of tester classes throughout. So tester classes is a real concept, and it's not at the same time. Tester classes, we call them tester classes because we were testing a particular object. So we could have a customer and a customer tester class, and that allows us to test, can we create a customer, and can we call its methods, do their work as expected. We can have the same thing for a car object and a car tester. We could have a dealership and a dealer tester. What I'm building now is an actual app that will run. So it uses all the code in the same way as a tester class would, but it's not there to test anything. It's actually operational. It's there to do real world stuff. So the main menu I've built, it's not really a tester. It's the main menu. It is the system. It is the actual product that we're trying to build. So that's really the distinction between a tester class and not a tester class is really conceptual. The code for a tester class or this main menu class I'm working on is identical. Just the purpose of a tester class is to test individual objects and test that they actually work together. Whereas the main menu that I'm building now, it's actually the system. It's a thing that I'm going to run and deploy in theory in the real world. So hopefully that helps you get your head around about what we mean by tester classes. When you upload your finished code at the end of each lecture, even better than that, my finished code, as I've mentioned every lecture so far, is here before we even start. So it's always up at least the morning before I start a lecture. So the completed example list with everything in there has been up from over the weekend at some point. So it's all there ready for you to look at. Do you have more than one supplier? So yes, you will have more than one supplier. You we'll need to create a few different suppliers to properly test the system. Just on the testing, we will be looking at that on Friday, but as I mentioned yesterday, all the notes and material for the testing is available in Queen's Online. I'll show where that is at the end of the lecture. Or you like to put the name of the suppliers in an array list. Well, I think supplier name is one of the instance variables, so you would need to put that in. Should we have comments in our code? Ideally, it's good practice. So the comments in the code, one thing that's going to help put my mind at rest is that you've done it yourself, that you've demonstrated your own understanding of what the code does. So it's good practice. I'm not going to penalise you if the code isn't very well commented, but it's something that should be in there as a manner of good practice. Will the main menu and all the code for it be at the start of the big tester? So the big testers will, yes, most of your code will be there, but for generating test data and things like that, you can use that utility type class. So the gen data class we looked at yesterday can be there as well. And last question for now, my scanning array list of private static, but it says legal modifier. Why? Haven't a clue. I'll need to have a look at your code. So if you want to bring your laptop up at the end of the lecture, I'll certainly have a look at that for you. Okay, pushing on then. So we've now built and tested the add new dealership and the add new car. The last one we need to do is have a look at the add new customer method. So let's pop down, get our method signature written for that, and then update the menu. So we're going to have public static void, and we're going to call it add new customer. Now that we've created our method signature, we're going to go all the way up to the top and we're going to update our menu. So this is the last one. It's now no longer in development. It's going to be finished by the end of the lecture. So we have a completely finished menu system now, which is nice. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the customer object before we get stuck into this. So what we need to do with this is probably one of the more straightforward of the objects for me to create. Actually, I need to read in 4 strings, one for forename, surname, the customer's organization, and the telephone. I need to create an instance of customer, and then I need to figure out which car I'm actually going to add this customer to. So there shouldn't be anything really new in what I'm about to do. We've done it all before, either in dealership or in the add new car methods. So we'll start flying through this. So the first thing I need to have is a prompt. I'm going to do mine as usual, just in one line. So it's going to be please enter customer forename. And then we're going to use a scanner to read that in. So we're going to have a string and we'll call it CFN. Just keep the variable names nice and short, save me a bit of typing. So CFN customer forename. And then it's going to be equal to mysc.next line because I'm reading in a string. So that's all the code there to read in a customer forename. Again, I would usually recommend you do this by hand rather than copy and paste, but I'm going to break my own rules and I'm going to copy and paste. So I need to read in the customer surname, organization, and telephone number. And then I need to update these, so it's going to be CFN, C surname, I'll do C org, and then I'll have C tel. Okay, so that's me, assuming I haven't made any cock-ups there, with the 4 pieces of information I need to create a customer. So now I'm going to create a new instance of the customer object, so I'll have a customer C, without the typos. It's going to be equal to a new customer. And then I'm just going to pass in the parameters I need. So here we can see that we're expecting a forename, surname, organization, and telephone number. I've got all of those things up above. So it's going to be CFN, CSN, CORG, and CTEL. So happy days. At this stage, if we wanted to, we could call a print method. In fact, let's go on ahead and do that. So we're going to do c.get customer details. Because this is returning a string, I need to surround it in a sysout. So we've got that, and let's just run and test what we've done so far. So we're now into option 4, and we'll have a John Smith QB, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 can be the telephone number, and there we go. I'm happy enough. My customer details are printing out. So what have we done? We've successfully mapped the menu to the add new customer method. We've successfully read in the 4 pieces of information needed to create a customer object. I've created the customer object from that information, and I've called the print method and proved that that has worked. So we're happy developers so far. So now that we've done that, we don't need this line anymore. It was just in there for testing purposes. The next thing we need to do, and this is probably the more complex bit, is figuring out which car to add it to. Now this is going to be a 2-step process, because first of all I need to figure out which dealership the car belongs to, and then I need to figure out which car I want to add it to. So I'm going to have 2 things here. I'm going to select the dealership first that I want, and once I've got the dealership, then I can see the list of their cars, and from there I'll be able to add in my new customer. So to do that, the first thing I want to do is get the dealership number. So Let's do a site, and the message we want to have is which dealership owns the car the customer is leasing. And then what we want to do is our for loop again. So we're going to have int I equals 0. We're going to go until I is less than the size of dealers dot size, and we're going to go I plus plus. So just on a little side note, for those that are feeling a bit more adventurous with this kind of stuff, you'll notice that there is a bit of code repetition going on now. I've already printed off all my dealerships before, so I could in fact just have another method inside this menu class somewhere that would just do this bit for me and save me having to duplicate the code. I'm doing it this way just because I think it's simpler to follow for our first time stepping through it. But if I was doing this properly, I would methodize this and just have one method that looks after printing out the dealerships and getting which one I want, and the same thing for cars. But for now, as I say, we're going to have it all inside the same methods. So we're going to do that. What we need to do then is print out our I plus 1, because again we want to see the value starting from 1, not the value starting from 0. And then we'll add in a little separator there. And then we want to go to the dealers list. We want to get whichever one is currently at I, so whichever one we're currently at in the list. And then I want to call the print dealer info method. So that's going to print out my list of options that I want to grab. After this, I want to see which one they want, and again, I'm not going to add any extra validation at this point. If you want to drop that in, crack on, but for now I'm going to assume whatever the user is typing in is correct. So we're going to have a sysout enter dealer number. As always, I like to have that in one line, so we'll have that in like so. Then we're going to have int dealer number is going to be equal to mysc.nextInt, whatever the user's typed in, and then we need to clear the new line character, so we're going to have mysc.nextLine. And then the last thing we need to do is just store the dealership that we're actually working with. So same thing as we did before, we're going to have a dealership called MyD, and it's going to be equal to dealers.get dealer number. Done. So that's that part. The code is literally identical to what I've just done in the car class. Literally identical. I probably could have copied and pasted it, but I'm in a typing mood today, so we'll have that there. We're now going to do the same thing again, but this time for cars. Now, here's where we'll have to remember this relationship we have between dealership cars and customers. The list of cars is inside the dealership. The dealership is inside the list of dealers. So bear that relationship in mind as I'm going through the next bit, because if you don't, this can look a little bit weird when I get to it. For now, let's go print off that list of cars. So we're going to have another sysout, and we're going to ask which car are you leasing. So which car is a customer leasing? And it's just going to be a question, because now I need to go and do another for loop. So int I is equal to 0 until I is less than, okay, so here's the first one to follow through. So until I is less than my dealer, so whichever dealer that I've wanted, get in the car list, so get dealer cars dot size. So I'm going to the dealership that I want to work with, I'm getting their list of cars, and I'm finding what the size that list of cars is. So I'm chaining three things together here. The dealership, inside the dealership I'm getting the dealership cars, and then I'm getting the size of that dealership cars list. So three things chaining together. If you can break it down into parts like that, I think it's much easier to digest. If you just look at it as one big line, it looks quite ugly. So chaining through part by part. And then in that list, same thing as always, I just want to print out each one. So we'll have I++. So in this case again, we're starting off with this all too familiar one here. We want to print out the option number, so I'm just going to copy and paste that for a bit of speed. And then in this one, here's where we have another one of these chains coming together. So we're getting our dealers, or sorry, not dealers, my bad. So we're getting our dealership that we want. We're getting the list of dealership cars. So we're now inside the dealership and we've accessed that list of cars. So that list of cars itself has many cars inside it. So what I need to do is get a specific car. So we're not done yet, but I'm just going to pause here. So here's the dealership I say that my car belongs to. I go inside that dealership and get the list of cars that that dealership has. Inside that list of cars, I go and I get each car there, because what I want to do is print out its details, because the same thing before, I'm going to print out a list of all the dealerships and I'm going to pick a dealership, and I want to print out a list of all the cars that dealership has and then pick up a specific car that I'm going to add my customer to. Which leads me to the last bit. We now have the car. What I need to do is actually print off its details. So we're going to have, we'll just do get car reg in this case. So we've gone inside the dealership that we want to use. We've got the list of cars of that dealership. In terms of the loop, I'm going to go through each car inside that list, and then what I'm going to do is get the car reg. So that's what's going to be happening there. Now, let me just tweak this a little bit, because get car reg returns a string. So if we look at the previous loop here, print dealer info prints that information to screen, get car reg just gets the car registration. So I need to actually print this out the screen as well. So what I'm going to do is just tweak this a little bit, and I'm going to join this onto that string and finish it off that way. So we've now just got one big concatenated string. If I bring it onto one line for a moment, it might make a bit more sense. So we've got one printout statement that's going to print out the option number, our separator, and then the car registration for each car in that list. If you can get your head around that and what's going on, you pretty much have interacting with objects inside objects nailed. Okay, that line, if you can get your head around it, how it's following the relationship between each of the objects and each of the object types, then you genuinely have it nailed. So focus on that line whenever you're playing around and doing your own revision. The push on ahead, that's going to print everything out. So once we've done that, we want to actually get the option number. So we'll actually take a quick pause here and we'll just see this part working before I add any more code. So let's run this. Okay, so what I want to do is add new customer. So we'll have John Smith QB 123. Which dealership owns the car that we're leasing? Well, let's say number 1. I've made a little booby. I've got a print L instead of a print there. I can fix that. But let's say that I want to do Curious Car Sales. I do that, and then it prints out my list of 3 cars that I want to do. So we find a dealership, and then using that dealership, I've printed off their list of cars. That's exactly what's happened there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just popping up a little bit higher in the code and changing this print ln to a print, just so that the 1 and the car dealership info prints in the same line. So we'll fix that. And aside from that, I'm pretty happy with how everything's sitting at the minute. So we're into the last few minutes, so we'll push through this last one. We want to do another sys out then, and we're going to ask which car number they want to use. So let's see what we'll see. Yeah, just enter car number. So whatever car number we want to use is in there. We're going to read that in. So we'll have int car number is equal to mysc.next int, and then clear the new line. And as usual, I've not done any validation on this. So again, advanced features if you want to. It's another place you can look at it. So we've got the car number read in there, and then we have the final 2 lines. This one is another one of those big doozies, because what we need to do is actually set the customer for that car inside that car list for that particular dealer. So it's going to be another one of these big chains. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my dealership. I'm getting the dealership cars. I want to get a specific car. So I'm getting the car number from the list. Again, what we want to do is just a -1 on that, because we've got that offset problem again. So we're taking -1 from it. Then we're calling the setter. We're setting the car lease to our customer that we've created, which is C. So another one of those juicy lines. Just to break it down one more time, We're getting the dealership that we selected earlier. We're accessing that dealership's list of cars. We're getting a specific car from that list. And then for that specific car, we're setting its car lease or the customer that's associated with that particular car to the customer we've created earlier. And that's it. Final thing we're doing is running the menu. And assuming I haven't made any cock-ups, that is our basic functionality complete. What we're going to do now is test it, have a quick look at today's meet, then I'll show you where this testing stuff is, and then that'll be you guys done and dusted for today. So let's run this. So we're going to, first of all, let's add a new dealership. So I'll call it test dealer, and we'll have Belfast. We're now going to add a new car, and we'll have that car, we'll stick with the same one, we'll have a BMW, it'll be a 520. Oh, hang on, I'm doing add new dealership again, ignore that. We'll actually just stop and run it. Nearly got to the end without making a mistake. But there we go. So sorry, we'll add new dealership again. So we'll have test dealer in Belfast. Then we're going to add a car, which is option 3. So we'll have ABC 321, and the car make is going to be a BMW. It's going to be a 520. It's going to be a diesel, and it's going to belong to our new dealership, which is 3. The final thing I want to do then is add my new customer. So we'll go for myself. It's going to be QUB, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we want to put it into our test dealership, and woohoo. Right, so I've got another one of these problems. So if we have a look, we've got index out of bounds exception. So we have a look at the main menu customer. This is where it's complaining. So add new customer, line 150. So the problem is here. Right, so anyone spot what I've done? I've forgotten to do something. Any brave volunteers want to shout it out? Correct, forgot the -1. So let's go in and fix that. So in dealership number, I'll stick the -1 in here in this case. And that'll get the correct dealer this time, hopefully. So we'll run this one more time. So fingers crossed that I don't cock it up, because this is the downside about testing. You have to go through the whole process again. So we're going to go for option 2. We'll have test dealer. We're going to go for Belfast. We're going to go for adding a new car then, which is option 3. So we're going to have ABC 123 and BMW 520, which is going to be a diesel. It's going to belong to my new test dealership. And then the final one, we're going to add a new customer. Hopefully works this time. We'll have myself. And it's going to belong to my test dealer. And then it's going to be the new, which car is the customer leasing? It's the new car that I've added, ABC 123. It brings them back to the main menu, and now is the moment of truth. I'm going to hit option 1, and it's going to print me out my nice new dealership, the car and the customer, which will bring all my functionality to completion. And if it doesn't work, I'm probably going to cry a little bit. So print all details, and there we go. Test dealership operates in Belfast. There's the car details, there's the customer details.